I'm David Martin Davies, and coming up on The Source, President Trump and Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. told Americans there's a proven link between Tylenol and autism, but science tells us something very different. What are people to make from a world where the leading U.S. health authority is again spreading medical disinformation that contradicts what their own doctor is recommending? And later on The Source, efforts to honor the history of indigenous people at the Alamo. That's apparently too much to handle for leading state Republicans. Recently, the former president and CEO of the Alamo Trust, Kate Rogers, was forced to resign after her dissertation said that politicians should stay out of history and the full story of the Alamo should be told, including contributions of the indigenous people. This is a community conversation. We want to hear from you. Call in at 833-877-8255. That's what's coming up on The Source. But first, this news.
Support for The Source podcast comes from UT Health San Antonio, South Texas' largest academic research institution, where what is discovered in its labs translates into life-changing patient care. More at uthealthsa.org.
A donation comes in many forms: a sustaining membership, a one-time gift, even a home, land, or commercial property. Donating property is a great way to give back, and you may even claim a tax deduction. Get the process started today. Call 844-277-HOME or visit tpr.careasy.org/real estate donation.
Live from the John L. Santico studio in downtown San Antonio, this is The Source from Texas Public Radio. I'm David Martin Davies. Later in the hour, we're going to hear about the history of indigenous people at the Alamo and why that history shouldn't be erased. But first, the connection between Tylenol and autism. What should people make of recent claims made by President Donald Trump and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? Here's a clip of Trump on September 22nd making claims about Tylenol and autism.
First, effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol during pregnancy, can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good.
With us to help us understand what to make of this is former Texas Republican Congressman Dr. Michael Burgess. And Dr. Burgess, welcome to The Source.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Our objective right now, Dr. Burgess, thank you for coming on, is to try and help people get a better idea of what to do if they have a fever, they're pregnant, they talk to their doctor, doctor says maybe take a little bit of Tylenol, and whether or not, what's a good idea and what's not. And we hear from President Trump. He said later in that press conference very explicitly, don't take Tylenol, fight like hell not to take it, tough it out, don't take Tylenol. He was very clear. So what do you make of that? And we really just want to provide clear information today for people who are confused.
Well, I hope you are looking to provide clear information. Here's the problem. The story's not clear. And while Secretary Kennedy has raised some concerns about the use of acetaminophen during pregnancy, do remember that this is an over-the-counter drug. It's not prescribed by a physician. A patient takes this because they feel it is necessary. Look, if the Secretary of Health and Human Services has discrete evidence that this is a compound that is in fact dangerous during pregnancy, they should put the data out there so that people can make the decision for themselves. Because again, I'd stress that this is an over-the-counter medication. I do second the notion that patients should talk to their doctors before the use of such medication during pregnancy. That's entirely appropriate. Most pregnant women, and I did take care of women during pregnancy for over 25 years when I was in practice, most of the time there's a reluctance to take anything during pregnancy because of just the the issues that have been mentioned. You don't know whether it is completely safe, and perhaps the safest option is to not take anything at all. And that may be to what the president was making reference. But I will also say this from the perspective of someone whose family has been touched by children who are on the spectrum. And it is a source of concern for families. And if there is anything that would lower that risk, most families would want to associate themselves with that lowered risk. So you've got to balance all of those things taken together. Now, there can be instances, and this is why women should consider talking to their doctors before they make a decision about whether or not to take a Tylenol. And let me just say, parenthetically, don't turn to your politician for medical advice. Turn to your doctor for medical advice. They're the ones who are trained to make these decisions and have your best interest at heart. But at the same time, if the secretary and the agency has evidence to believe that acetaminophen is harmful during pregnancy, they need to put that out there and make it as clear as possible. I'll tell you what's interesting to me in this entire debate. The president did reference that he wanted the FDA to put information out there to doctors, and indeed they did. They sent a letter out a little over a month ago, but the letter's kind of it's not emphatic about the non-use of Tylenol. It just says, and I'm going to quote here, the association between acetaminophen and autism has been described in studies. A causal relationship has not been established, and there are contrary studies in the scientific literature. The association of ongoing scientific debate, and clinicians should be aware of the issue in their decision making. Well, that's exactly right. Physicians should be aware of the debate in their decision making. But then he goes on to say in the last paragraph, this consideration should also be balanced with the fact that acetaminophen is the safest over-the-counter alternative in pregnancy among all analgesics and antipyretics. Aspirin and ibuprofen have well-documented adverse impacts on the baby. So there you have it. It is an area of ongoing scientific debate. Again, I think women are best served by having a conversation with their doctor, maybe even early in their pregnancy, before they are faced with a fever or some other problem that might require them to take an analgesic.
Right, and that is the concern during the pregnancy. Women with a high fever, particularly early in the pregnancy, has a high fever, that can cause complications, couldn't it?
Absolutely. And here's the thing, too. Remember that a pregnancy lasts 280 days. So that's a long time. And does a single Tylenol anywhere in that 280-day span suddenly increase the risk for a neurodevelopment disorder? I think the answer to that is no. But if the risk is not zero, then patients need to be apprised of that fact as well.
Right. So it's just, we're trying to clarify this because there are a lot of scared people out there, women who are pregnant, who plan on being pregnant, and they're trying to decide, well, my doctor told me that it would be okay to take Tylenol, but, Secretary Kennedy and Donald Trump told me, Trump says fight like hell not to take it. And they say, well, what should I do? And it's odd that they would use that press conference on September 22nd in order to make such an emphatic plea to people about Tylenol and acetaminophen, saying it's associated with a very increased risk of autism, and yet the scientific data is not there. That's just, that's hard on people.
Yeah, it is. And one of my concerns through this, and I know how much guilt mothers carry with them.
Oh, yeah.
Not just during their pregnancy, but throughout their lives, about perhaps a decision I made during pregnancy did have an adverse effect. So moms have enough guilt already without adding to that burden. Again, yeah. I would come down, I don't mean to be doctor-centric on this, but I do think the best option, while the president and the secretary have raised some concerns, do talk to your doctor before you make a final decision as to whether or not to take a medicine during pregnancy.
Okay, we're going to take a break right now, and our phone lines are open. If you have a question or comment for former Texas Republican Congressman and a doctor, Dr. Michael Burgess, about what to make of this. People have got to make decisions. They want the decisions based on the best information that they can get. Are we being well served with this type of delivery of, hey, there's autism and there's Tylenol. Is that good? Give us a call, 833-877-8255, 833-TPR-TALK. We're going to be back in 1 minute.
Support for this podcast of The Source comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to rewarding policyholders who keep their workers safe and losses low. More at texasmutual.com/TXM Advantage. Texas Mutual. Texans get it.
You're listening to The Source on Texas Public Radio. I'm David Martin Davies. We're talking about a press conference that President Donald Trump held at the White House with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Health and Human Services Secretary, talking where they claimed there was that acetaminophen, Tylenol, used in pregnancy can be associated with what they said was very increased risk of autism. They advised pregnant women to avoid Tylenol unless medically necessary. And so we're just trying to clarify that. Our goal really is to provide clear information, not really to get bogged down in politics. But if you got questions and comments, give us a call, 833-877-8255, 833-TPR-TALK. I do want to hear another clip. This is from Secretary Kennedy. This was later on. This was last week, and he sort of walked back the hard language about the causation between autism and Tylenol. And I don't know why we keep using this brand name, because it is the active ingredient, acetaminophen, seems to be the concern. But anyway, let's listen to this clip.
With Tylenol, we've all said from the beginning that the causative association with between Tylenol given in pregnancy and the perinatal periods is not sufficient to say it definitely caused autism, but it is very suggestive. And it's suggestive in animal studies and core blood studies and observational studies from nation to nation. And so there should be a cautious approach to it. And that's why our message to patients, to mothers, to people who are pregnant, to the mothers of young children is consult your physician. And we have asked physicians to minimize the use to when it's absolutely necessary.
And so, Dr. Michael Burgess, you seem to be saying that people should probably be very cautious about any medication that they would take during pregnancy. Is that right?
Well, and I think most expectant mothers are. At least that was my experience in 25 years of providing care and advice to moms during their pregnancies. Again, I would stress that a pregnancy is 280 days long, and is it a question of taking a single Tylenol one day during a pregnancy when a mom has a high fever? Now, the letter that the FDA sent out to doctors even talks about this. They say some studies have described that the risk may be most pronounced when acetaminophen is taken chronically throughout the pregnancy. Well, I will just tell you, in 25 years of practicing obstetrics, I don't recall having a patient who had a necessity for taking Tylenol daily throughout the pregnancy. That would just be a singularly rare occurrence. I guess it could happen, but it's not something that I encountered as someone who was involved in the clinical practice of delivering care during pregnancy.
Let's go to one of our callers. Our number is 833-877-8255, and we have Devin. Devin, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for taking the call. I'm just perplexed why patients wouldn't take the word of their physician and actually consider the suggestions of somebody who suggested ingesting bleach or taking ivermectin to treat COVID. So that's what's troubling for me is I trust my doctor. So that was my comment.
All right, Devin, thank you for that call. And Dr. Burgess, do you want to react to that?
Well, I don't think anything I said was inconsistent. You do want to talk to your doctor now. I would point out to Devin that patients don't always take their doctor's advice either. So there's plenty of times I would recommend something that I don't think that advice was taken to heart. But still, in this instance, I do believe the discussion is best held between a patient or a physician.
So the issue of causation versus correlation, if someone is taking Tylenol, then they probably are dealing with other medical issues.
It could be.
And so in these studies that they have sourced saying, hey, we're seeing studies clearly showing that taking acetaminophen, there's some sort of linkage there. But other studies have looked at this, and they have filtered out for these other correlation issues, and they have found no causation at all. So whereas Kennedy says, okay, we have found studies that show that there is something here going on. There could be a risk, and then there are other studies that totally says we don't see it. And there's been a lot of work done in this area, right? This is not a narrow band area of research. Can you react to that?
Well, I think what you said is correct. And that could be true of a number of things. It is not just acetaminophen.
Yes.
Then the question becomes, how important is it to take acetaminophen in pregnancy? And there are some limited but significant areas where that would be a consideration. The primary one that's always talked about is fever. And again, when we talk about a fever, you need to be careful about where you define it. It's not a temperature of 99.5, probably over 100.5, or certainly anything over 101 during pregnancy. You do want to make an effort to bring that down. And if Tylenol is the best way to do that, acetaminophen is the best way to do that, that has to be a consideration.
Let's go to another caller. We do have Randall, our number 833-877-8255. Randall, thank you for calling in. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. I want to just jump onto the last caller there. Read the labels, not the labels of the medicine. I mean, you want to read those, of course, but read the labels of the people who are talking. Start off with your guest. I looked up his profile on Wikipedia. Michael Burgess is an American physician and politician. That's how he's listed, not politician and physician, physician first. McGovern Medical School at the University of Texas Health Science Center in Houston, completed a residency in obstetrics and gynecology at Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas. And this is interesting. Over the course of his career, Burgess delivered more than 3,000 babies. Okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. You look at Robert F. Kennedy Jr., politician, environmental lawyer, author, conspiracy theorist, and anti-vaccine activist. Zero medical credentials there. And Trump, I'm not even going to go there. So, yeah, we need to listen to the people who are trained. We need to listen to the scientists. And medicine, first and foremost, is a science. And I suspect that, so Dr. Burgess and I probably won't agree on a lot of political positions. He's a Republican and I'm a more Democrat. But, hey, I have no doubt that he is a professional, qualified, and more importantly, compassionate and caring physician. And those are the people we need to listen to.
Randall, thank you for your call. And so, Dr. Burgess, is that about right?
Well, I would just point out to Randall that, as you know, you don't get to write your own Wikipedia page. In fact, if you're caught trying to do that, the consequences can be quite severe and or embarrassing. So I never consult my own Wikipedia page, but he's mostly got it right in reference to my training.
All right. So the thing is, though, I didn't want to get dragged into politics, but we have Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Last week, he filed a lawsuit against Tylenol. And here he is. He was on Newsmax, I believe, on cable channel, which leans right, explaining what he did. Let's give a listen.
So look, we're in litigation now. We'll be discovering more, but we have looked at the studies showing that taking this acetaminophen while you're pregnant increases the risk of ADHD and also other disorders, including autism. So we are suing them, and we hopefully will also find out from documentation that they have, and we're pretty sure they have it because they already announced in 2017 that there was a problem, and they made an effort to push the acetaminophen part of their company off to a separate company and totally disassociate, trying to protect themselves from liability, which I think they knew they had. That's why we filed the lawsuit, because of the damage that's been done to potentially millions of children across the country. The studies I've seen show a correlation between taking acetaminophen when you're pregnant and a massively increased number of children that have autism and ADHD.
Is that right, Dr. Burgess? His interpretation of those studies saying that there is a massive increase of risk of autism and ADHD if you take Tylenol during pregnancy. He seems to be overselling it.
Yeah, perhaps. I'm not aware of any study that actually comes to that conclusion. Now, do remember that you said you wanted to separate what is medical factual information from the political.
Yes, sir.
And bear in mind, our Attorney General is running for another office, and it's important for him to get headlines, and he certainly did with this. Interestingly, the Wall Street Journal wrote an editorial after that lawsuit was filed, and it was fairly critical of our Attorney General for going down the road that he has. And here's, I don't know this, but what concerns me is there is a large class action lawsuit against the makers of acetaminophen. The judge in that case found probably a year ago that the studies that were cited lacked sufficient merit and standing to be introduced. And so they have been looking for another angle to get this sort of revive this case. I don't know whether that the Attorney General has that data that will do that or not. I guess we'll find that out in the coming days, and it is important to find that out. Again, I would stress, our family has been touched by this as well. And if there is anything to what the Attorney General is saying, I would shout it from the rooftops. But at the same time, the Attorney General is pursuing the lawsuit, and I did read the lawsuit that he filed, but it's more along the lines of deceptive trade practices and the violation of the Texas Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. That's his point, that there were assets that were transferred from one company to another. So it's outside the medical side. It's outside the scientific side. And it's more on the, did they do everything right from a business standpoint? The other inference from the Wall Street Journal editorial is that, again, that there is a reason, that it looks like they're trying to give a reason to breathe some additional life into the lawsuit that a year ago the judge found that they couldn't accept the evidence that they were trying to introduce.
Yeah, I'm going to try and squeeze one last call with Bob. And Bob, thanks for calling in. You're on the air. We're really tight on time. Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to mention, just tuned in, high fevers are normally associated with increased risk of autism, especially in the second trimester, or if you have multiple fevers. So I don't know how they can associate this with Tylenol specifically.
All right. Well, Bob, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Dr. Burgess, can you react to that?
Well, that's correct. Is it the treatment for the fever or the fever itself that's causing the problem? And again, a lot of questions yet to be answered. But again, let me just speak now, not as someone who was in Congress or someone who practiced medicine, but as a family member. If I thought that there was something that could help people in this situation, again, I'd shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
At the same time, there seem to be other avenues or other issues that people are pursuing here, and it's more than just the scientific information, and that you want to be sure that you take good care to listen to your doctor and try to do what's best for you and your unborn child.
Listen to your doctor. If he says take a little bit of Tylenol, you have a high fever, listen to that. Make your decision based on what your doctor says, not what some politicians or lawyers say. Is that what you're saying?
That would be the gist of what I just, in a long way, explained to you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to bottom line it for folks because, All right, well, Dr. Michael Burgess, thank you so much for coming on the air. I think we did clarify quite a bit here, and I appreciate your help on that. Former Texas Republican Congressman and doctor, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.